Hey, thank you so much for this workshop. Just a question, Dr. Piper, earlier you kind of worked us through a little bit of your sermon writing process. I just wanted to know if maybe you, Pastor DeYoung, or Pastor John could maybe expand on your personal process of writing sermons. I found that very helpful and instructive.
The piece of paper goes there like that. The text goes up there like that. The knees have already been on the floor for quite a while. And if I don't know the text well, that's going to take a long time, 2-3 hours, just to try to get what's going on in these 5 or 6 verses. So that if I know the text well, it's mainly homiletical. And all the while, this just seems to be a magical piece of paper. As you write down a thought that comes to your mind or text, the very writing makes other thoughts come to my mind. And I write those down, and then I draw connections. So that, I don't know, that's just a magical piece of paper for me. There may be 4 or 5 of those. Then once that I've done that in getting ready for this, it took a day and a half basically for each of these messages. So it took all day and half a day. And I didn't start typing until well into the afternoon of the first day. So all of it was just doodling, thinking, listening, and wondering what I'm going to do. Then I compose on the screen like this. And I'm actually writing what I'm going to say. And I say it out loud. And now we get these dictation things. I push a button and I say it and it writes it. It writes some really funny things sometimes. You have to go back and correct it. But I'm preaching it as I say it. So I don't. Some people when they write a manuscript, it sounds literary. Mm-hmm. I don't think I sound literary when I write. I'm writing what I'm going to say, and that becomes. I know how long it can be, and so I shoot for those. 12,000 bytes, and that becomes a 35 or 40 minute message. So that's roughly, and then once it's up there, and that has now taken 10, 12 hours, day and a half. This morning, or last night, I need another hour on it. I need another hour just to get it in here, walking it through, thinking of you and that text, and praying over it and saying it out loud to myself to get it inside. That's the process here.
That's great. Some similarities. I'll try to be brief. I also like to start with a pad of paper. I like to write. And if it's New Testament, I'll usually start by translating the Greek. When I'm going through the Old Testament, honestly, my Hebrew is not as good as my Greek. And often the Old Testament, you're taking a whole chapter. I'm just not as good at Hebrew as I'd like to be. I can't translate a whole chapter of it. But I'm checking. Is that word? Am I anything I'm missing here? And I try to just write like that. Try to see what am I seeing here? What are the interesting things? What are the questions at that point? Just whatever comes. I'm trying not to filter too much. And again, that's a couple of hours. As much as I can go with that before I go to the commentaries, if something starts happening and I start seeing something, if I'm a little stumped or I'm not quite sure what that means, I'll go to the commentaries. I know there's different theories. I have some friends who do 15, 17, 20 commentaries. I don't do that. I start with about 5 in a series, and then I find there's probably just 3 of them that I need. The commentaries check if I've missed something. How do I get this particularly difficult exegetical point? So I get the commentaries. All of that is the easy stuff for me. I got a lot of ideas. I got a lot of stuff. I could stand up now and probably extemporaneously say, here's 6 cool things I learned from this passage. The hard part, as I said, is, okay, now what? What is this text about? And sometimes it's pacing around. It's mowing the lawn. It feels like wasted time. It's going on a walk. What do I do with all of this, lest I just get up and do, here's a bunch of interesting stuff. And then once something clicks, it's amazing how I'll spend time and nothing's happening, and then, there it is. And now I'll get to my computer and I'll start writing. And you saw I don't do a full manuscript, do notes. I usually try to start on a Wednesday or Thursday afternoon, just get it in me a little bit, And then all day Friday, no meetings. That's all day sermon prep. And then Saturday, it bleeds over into Saturday. So it's about 10 hours. It can be less if it's all familiar exegetical terrain, or it can be more. The easiest thing for me, I find teaching a lot easier than preaching. I see things and explain things and can understand things. I think the preaching process is creation ex nihilo. It's every week. It's that blank page. What do I do? And it's satisfying, but I find it much more challenging than even just, okay, I'm going to give a lecture on something to explain it. The sermon has this moral force and this spiritual, emotional arc to it, and that takes time that even if I could short circuit the process, I don't feel like I could preach with authenticity and power if I didn't spend those hours. Nathan, I know you. Yes, sir.
Yes. Hi, Kevin. Hey, John. So my homiletics professor told us young seminarians that our first 50 sermons are going to be some real stinkers, and what that says to me is that the power of God is inhibited in my youthfulness, my inexperience, my ignorance. And so what, if any, encouragement is there to be had in the power of God and the power of my preaching in our first 50 sermons or more?
I would just say your professor's, Nathan's probably right. Was I that professor?
No.
No, yeah. He may be here, and that's probably right in a sense. And I'm sure he would also add, they stink probably homiletically, but if there's truth and it's clear, God saves people. He used a donkey. He can use us if we speak what is true. It's very humbling when I go back. And sometimes if I'm preaching on something I preached on 18 years ago, and I go look, and I pull up the WordPerfect file. I have never once pulled up a sermon like that and thought, that was really pretty good. I always think, those people were so gracious. That was so meandering, and it was too long, and why did I get on that hobby horse? And God is gracious with our stinky sermons. We just want to get better.
No, that's good. I don't need to say anything else to that.
How do you evaluate your preaching? I.e., do you experience the Monday morning blues? And then how are you growing in preaching? I know you both have done this for many years, but how are you growing personally in preaching?
I evaluate it by whether it accurately reflects what's in the text and whether it has some element of clarity and creativity to it. I don't put too much stock in what people say about it because they tend to be commendatory all the time, and the people that don't like it don't talk to you. So that's not too reliable. Somebody asked me this the other day about this present cutting edge. I would say at this stage, I'm trying to get really close to Jesus so that it has the aroma of heaven and hell about it, because I'm old, right? I'm going to drop over soon. And I taste that. I taste how close Jesus is. And this is either real or it's not real. And you can have moments when, wow, I'm going to do a funeral when I get home on Monday morning. So I get home on Sunday night at 9 o'clock, and we'll preach a funeral message at 11 o'clock Monday morning for Carl, who's younger than me. And I prepared that funeral day before yesterday. And I'm just so aware that's going to be me. And so I would just say the cutting edge is trying to get into every message a sense of reality of heaven, a sense of reality of the living Christ. Do we believe this? Are we walking so close to him that he's a real presence in our lives?
Yeah, just That's wonderful. Briefly, I don't wake up on Monday and feel like quitting, but every sermon, to some degree, little or big, I will feel when I get home on Sunday afternoon that was terrible. I really do. And I don't say that, that's not feigned humility. That's not even real humility. It's probably pride. Maybe it's the spiritual warfare, and it's also probably the underside of pride. Did I measure up? But I feel that. I do not walk down from the pulpit and think, I nailed it. I never feel that. And I don't know, men, what your wife is like. Some men, my wife's my most honest critic. I don't want an honest critic. I want my wife to love me and tell me things that aren't true about my sermons. I mean, not entirely, but
we married the wrong one. Which is the right one.
The right. Tricia she will always, what you said was true, and it was so good, and it was blessed, and I was, well, what did you get out of it, hon? Well, I was a little distracted. I had all the kids. And so quick illustration, John heard me say this a few weeks ago. I remember hearing Sinclair Ferguson preach one of the first times I was with him at a conference. I think Sinclair is just one of the greatest preachers. I love listening to him. And he did this magical, marvelous thing with the Trinity, and he can just do heaven. We heard him preach on heaven a few weeks ago. Amazing. I went up to him, I said, Sinclair, that was you brought us in. It's like you knew each person of the Trinity personally. You brought us into the throne room of heaven. That was amazing. And he said, oh, Kevin, that was a dog's breakfast. That's exactly what he said. And I thought, your dog eats very well. And I know Sinclair now. I don't think he was faking. I think he really, really felt that. So you may, it's not that I think God wants us to feel bad dog all the time, but you will often feel that. And I think in my life, it's probably been the Lord keeping me humble to the degree that I am humble, if I can say that humbly. My cutting edge, I want to know Christ more. And I think some of what I've talked about, looking for, not trying to do too much, looking for a big idea, being okay that I'm good at some things and I'm not going to be the best at other things. I think about, yes, the comments in the handshake line can be the same. But if I think the thing that people will say most to me is something like, Pastor, I would have never seen that in that text by myself. And I just saw something. So I think that's what I do well. And I think rather than majoring on things that I wish were different about my preaching, trying to lean into, I hope the Lord can use that without excusing any other bad habits.
Thanks. As somebody who rarely gets to preach, I'm a fellow elder at a small Baptist church in Raleigh, so once in a while. What could you offer to others who might be here besides myself that would encourage and support our pastors and even help us to share with other church members as how they could prepare for an upcoming sermon or reflect in the following week on the message they just heard?
Yeah, John.
Well, you should pray for him that God would protect his heart and his mind. So prayer would be of the first thing to say. You should guard him so that he has the space in which to prepare and isn't put upon, I think, surrounded by elders who know how valuable his time is. Help him, guard him in that way. I think the elders should model for the people and say, as occasion arises, that preparing for the sermon is happening all through the week as you keep yourself holy and stay in the Word, but especially Saturday night. It seems to me that our people, and we're training our kids wrong in this regard, think that Saturday night is a night when you can stay out late. Kids stay out late. No, they shouldn't stay out late. They stay out late on Friday and go to bed at 9 or 10 on Saturday, because the most important morning of the week is Sunday morning. To be alert and awake and hungry. And so you turn off the television at 4 in the afternoon And don't watch it and don't turn it on in the morning, and read your Bible and get your heart ready. So there is a readiness for the receiving of the word that I think our people need to be taught. The elders can really help in this regard if they spread that word.
Yeah, it's good.
Hi, I'm currently in school right now, and I'm at a young age, so I'm not right now at a church. Not right now in leadership at a church, but I do believe that's God's will for my life in the future. So what advice would you give for other people, maybe around my age, who's still in school, but are looking forward to that?
Get involved in a church, become a member of your church, serve in all sorts of different ways. I love to see young men, not only that they want to preach in the church service, good, maybe called to that. Are you happy to teach the 5-year-olds? When I was in seminary, I did the 5-year-old catechism class, and that was good for me. And one of the young boys in the class always called me Mrs. DeYoung, because it was just. And now that young boy married Tom Grolsema's daughter, wherever Tom is in here. So do lots of different things. Show yourself to be humble, to be teachable. I do think with young men, if someone is willing to work hard and is teachable, you may or may not have the gifts or calling for ministry, but the Lord will use you to do ministry if you're willing to work hard and be teachable.
You don't know your gifts by going off into the woods and asking God to show you your gifts. You know your gifts by serving. So I taught 7th grade boys my second year in seminary, then I taught 9th grade boys, and then I was asked by the Galilean class, young marrieds, to teach them. And at the end of my seminary, I knew I have a gift of teaching. That's who I'll be. I'm going to be a teacher. And I went off to graduate school to do that. I only knew that because I tried. You can't know yourself except in community. And the way you know you have a spiritual gift is if others are being spiritually built up by what you do. And they will tell you that, and they will urge you on, and you can't force it by yourself.
That's good. Over here, yep.
I'm a worship leader at my church, and I related so much to what you were saying earlier, Mr. Piper, about just Calvinism, once you come to believe the truth of it, it feeling like a second conversion. And the doctrines of grace have given me such joy and have made God seem just so greater than I've ever imagined. And my question is there's a lot of churches today that are very Calvinist or Reformed, and there's a lot of churches, of course, that aren't. But what about those churches that are kind of in between? Those churches where there's like a very soft Calvinism. For someone like me who's so excited and I want other people to feel and experience this God, yet there's this hesitancy with the leadership, even some who may very well agree with what I'm saying, but there's a hesitancy. How should I handle that?
It's different depending on your position. A soft Calvinism is bound in the next generation to be no Calvinism, I think. I sympathize, however, especially in maybe a non-denominational or maybe Baptist. If you're Presbyterian, you're at least supposed to be Calvinist. All of our pastors are supposed to be 5-point Calvinists. That's what they promise to be. And I'm sure John would say this too. If you have some teaching responsibility, you don't have to lead, and you shouldn't lead with next sermon series 5 points of Calvinism. Preach through John 6. Preach through Romans. You probably have Bible people who love to believe Bible things and want to see Bible things. And I think if they can get a sense of these Bible things, and I do think at some point you need to say they're a part of a tradition, and here are some of the, whether it's London Baptist or Westminster or something, here's part of the tradition, here's some of the documents that help us understand this better, and here's some of the books. I don't think you have to lead with that. It's difficult, however, So I've gotten this question many times from, say, it's often from a young guy who's an associate pastor, and they say, my senior pastor. I don't think God calls people to subvert the leadership of the senior pastor. If he's heretical or something, you need the appropriate mechanism to call that out. But if David said, I'm not going to lay a hand on Saul, then I don't think the call is to start a coup or a rebellion in your church and divide it. I think you talk to the leadership, you talk to the senior pastor. I think if there's, over time, an unwillingness to do anything other than a kind of play it safe waffling, I do think in time you think about going to another church for your kids and the people that you're bringing, that they are going to get clarity on these issues. Not simply because these issues matter, but because handling the text in a clear way matters. And I think churches that hesitate between two opinions on this are usually de facto Arminian with some Calvinists on staff. Like churches that hesitate between egalitarian and complementarian are probably functionally egalitarian with some complementarians hanging on for dear life.
Yeah, in my judgment, you are the second most influential person in the church. Therefore, structuring, if you get to call the shots on which songs are we singing and how will they be woven together, you have amazing influence, maybe not over the pastor who's oblivious and unchangeable, but the people, because today, not only historically, but contemporary songs today are incredibly God-exalting. There are many very God-centered, big God songs out there, contemporary and traditional. And you can, week by week, nurture this people to be at home in saying things in their songs they'd never say any other time. And that creates an atmosphere in which it just might be drawn out of the pastor.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Pastor. They both talk to, like, we need to find our voice and us to whatever we do, be us for God, be real for God, for other people. And they talk about how we need to like how we do our emotions with other people. And I think about it like, sorry, I'm a little bit nervous.
That's okay.
We have a little bit of revival of the doctrine of the Reformed. And what Viper said, like, there's some people, they don't want to involve her emotions because sometimes they think, these people, they're going to look at me and then, now this Pentecostal right now, they're going to show herself. And how they both deals to, hey, I be safe. How can I be enjoying to be safe without people judge me to just express myself? Like, I'm happy because I'm safe. How we can get this balance between, we need to put all ourselves, our mind, our emotion, and have a balance to, hey, this still the gospel is not different between these both.
Outthink your people. Outthink your elders. Run circles around them intellectually. Bring such arguments to the elder council on any issue that they can't resist it. Be ahead of your elders in thinking, and then they'll take your emotion. If you try to turn it the other way around, say, we need to be emotional people, you're going to sound suspicious. You're going to like, it's getting out of hand. The caboose is leading the train here, and that's not the way it's going to work. So I really think if you can't outthink your partners in ministry, stay a step ahead of them. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're smarter. It just means you work harder. You study the Bible so well that if the issue is divorce in your counsel, you're bringing your best arguments, and you're showing our pastor is not driven by his emotions. He's driven by the Bible, and he thinks hard, and he also happens to feel things very strongly. That's the way it's going to work. That's the way they're going to accept it.
I was telling John earlier that even in Presbyterian churches, we do like emotions. We have a couple of them. But I mean, for real, I tell our people often, we want emotions, we just don't want to take shortcuts. There's a way to do emotions with lights and a chord change that produces an emotional effect, which Edwards would call a non-sign. Animal spirits. You just viscerally respond to things. Doesn't mean that's wrong. You feel emotions for all sorts of things. So I want people to have the best theology. So you can get filled up by eating Skittles. I like Skittles. That's not a healthy diet. You need to have meat, potatoes. So that's what the word is, to have the deepest emotions through the best truth. You can have all the flutterings that happen when, you're a guy and you see a girl and something starts to spark and you feel something. What you feel after 20, 30, 50 years of marriage, it better be deeper, higher, better, richer. That's what we're trying to give to our people. I think it's going to backfire if we ever say, all right, you're not emotional enough. Let's everybody practice doing this and doing that. I think you want to give people the freedom. I think there's also different cultural expectations. One of the things that I'll just sometimes say to men, and men in particular, all right, I understand people have different register of emotions. I just want you to think about the way you respond when you watch a football game. I've seen it. You have emotions. You have some strong emotions. Just want to think about why is none of that coming out in your time with the Lord?
My wife and I are planning on having children pretty soon in the future, and we're really genuinely struggling with the baptism and what to do with that. Yeah, and at the risk of dividing the conference and YouTube, but just your biggest helps in trying to shed some light on that. I know you're different in opinion on that, and yet you guys are together, and so
I'll let John go first. I'll clean up.
Yeah.
John, I would love for you to do what would be your best Baptist argument, and what do you think is the best? What's my best argument? And I'll do the same.
The Catholic Church is your best argument.
That's not.
Been around for a long time.
The small c, it's in the Apostles' Creed.
Touche.
Yeah.
So here I am in Germany in a class on the Spirit and 1 Peter, and I go away on a retreat with 12 Lutherans and a Lutheran professor, and I'm the lone Baptist. I can hardly speak German. And they turn to me and say, so what's with this adult baptism? Because nobody in Germany does this except sects called Baptists. And I said, Colossians 2:12. Having been buried with him in baptism, in which you were also raised with him through faith in the powerful working of God. So I think that little phrase, through faith, kept me a Baptist through 3 years of Lutheran education in Germany. What happens in baptism is that we die and we rise with him through faith. My faith, not the pastor's faith, not my parents' faith, but my faith. So I said that out loud. And the students kind of said, And the professor, without missing a beat, Professor Goppel, godly man, loved him. He said, that text works for you because it's designed for evangelistic settings, not family settings. That text does not deal with your kids. And I said, well, as long as it doesn't exclude kids, I'm taking it for kids. The kids don't have faith like that, and therefore I don't baptize them. That verse has been helpful for me. There are lots of other arguments, but just existentially at that moment when I had to deal with that situation where I was kind of all by myself, it helped me. I can't think of a good argument for Kevin.
So you just
I'm working it.
No,
I'm
you just
working it.
read Colossians 2:12,
Yeah, go ahead.
Colossians 2:11. In him you were circumcised with circumcision made without hands by putting off the body of the flesh by the circumcision of Christ, having been baptized, buried with him in baptism, and the rest of verse 12.
Which says through faith.
It's true. The connection there in a single sentence is in the same breath, Paul is comparing what's the spiritual import of circumcision with the spiritual import of baptism. So Paul says in Romans 4:11 that Abraham received the sign of circumcision, which is a seal of the righteousness that comes by faith. So I think everything Baptist wants to say about baptism representing faith, justification, union with Christ, forgiveness, I agree that baptism signifies all of those things. And I believe Romans 4:11 says circumcision signified all of those things. So the question is not what baptism signifies, but whether that sign can be applied prior to the known exercise of faith. We certainly know if Paul says circumcision meant that, that's what it meant. And for Abraham, he was then told, your sons, go circumcise them on the 8th day, with that spiritual significance. And yet they were to receive that sign pointing to that reality, because I think our biggest difference is what is new or not new about the new covenant. Is the new covenant new in a way that the family principle is no longer operative, so that each one will know the Lord, and so it's new in that way? Is it new in the way from a bike to a car, or is it new in the way from a puppy to a dog? I say it's from a puppy to a dog. It's grown up, same principle. If I told you I got a great new insurance plan, it's great, it's got better coverage, it's got lower premiums, you're gonna love this, our whole business, you're gonna love this new insurance plan. By the way, your kids aren't included in the insurance plan anymore. Love it? Say, how is that a better insurance plan? I think you would see the absolute explosion in the church if it was immediately understood that our children are no longer a part of this covenant community. I'll give John the last word if you want to.
Did that help?
No.
I'm done. I'm done.
There you go.
Thank you.
Well, sorry.
Hey, thank y'all for today. I feel less spiritual than the previous question askers here, but I want to talk about AI. It seems like the more I play around with these like large language model AIs like ChatGPT, what they're really good at is throwing together outlines and manuscripts that are something like a sermon. So could I ask you guys, what do you think humans can do in sermon preparation that AI will never be able to do? And then practically, how would you think about and prepare for preaching in a way that makes your preaching AI-proof or better than ChatGPT?
No.
I am not an expert on AI, but I have given, just one little rubric I have in my head, and it's similar to how you might use Logos or Bible software with AI. Use AI to fetch you things, not to create you things. So, you can Google search to find a verse in the Bible. I do it all the time. Use AI, tell me all, give me a history of the city of Jericho. I think you can use AI to go find you something, tell you something. I am loath to have preachers use AI to give them outlines and illustrations and sermons. I think it's of the devil. I really mean that. I think it is the devil tempting preachers to do shortcuts. And even what I just said about using AI to fetch you something, I would also caution us against it. I think there is, I'm old. I think I use hard books wherever I can. I just never figured out how to use logos very well. People have tried to show me all sorts of times. I need somebody who knows technology like John to show me how to do it. So it's not wrong. It's certainly not wrong. But for me, there is something in the slowness of the process of getting a book off my shelf, of having to read and learn about the city of Jericho, that is helping me process and think and ruminate and slow down. I don't want too many shortcuts.
Yeah. The thing that Kevin didn't say is that AI will never produce affections. Mm-hmm. It will produce thought, but not affections. It can never have a heart. I don't care what they do, it will never have a heart for God. That little doohickey will never have a heart for God. They can reproduce words that sound like they have affection, but you know better. You know better. This is unique. This is absolutely unique, and he made it for himself. And I think it matters, secondly, how you stir up authentic love for God. The first and greatest commandment is, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. AI can never do that, will never do that. And then how you get there matters. And I think that meditating on the text is the best way to get there, and AI is just another commentary. You can say, tell me what John Murray thinks about Romans 5:5. It'll tell you. But it's just another commentary. And so treat it like a commentary. I sparely use commentaries. They're way secondary to the text and the search function of Logos. I mean, the most common thing I do is study, relationships, and word studies, because how Paul used that word over here and here and here makes all the difference in how I see things here. And if you try to short circuit that, all those things that are showing up on that little piece of paper here will be replaced, and it won't have the same power, won't have the same authenticity. So those two things, it'll never feel, it'll never have a heart for God, and it will never replace your moving toward those affections in an authentic encounter with the Word.
Then we got maybe two more questions.
Hey, Pastor John. Hey, Pastor Kevin. I'm Hamad, and I'm a missionary from a highly sensitive country, but I came into the preaching ministry about 6 months ago, and my inspiration to come into preaching ministry was Pastor John MacArthur. But my question is related to somewhat from my country. The thing is that what I've seen in some pastors, that whenever the sermon is done, they have some kind of expectation to like people are going to come and they're going to applaud them, or they're going to praise them that, oh yeah, you nailed the sermon. It was super awesome. And I personally think that it shouldn't be like that. It should be more focused on if it is being delivered in the right way to the congregation. So what would you advise me on that, if I'm thinking the right thing or I am not on the right page on that?
Yeah, I don't have people saying that to me after my sermons. I think there's encouragement. Every pastor needs encouragement. So I appreciate, it's usually the same people that go through the line, and I appreciate meaningful encouragement. Thank you, that spoke to me. So yes, we want encouragement. That's how God wired us, and you see Paul modeling that in Romans 16. He's praising all sorts of people in his congregation. And Rufus's mother, who was like a mother to me, Rufus's mom must have been through the moon. I mean, she must have been so excited. But yes, if there's, I do not want to cultivate a culture that, one, I'm indispensable, or I'm the last true man standing, or I cannot be spoken against, or every sermon deserves great accolades. Not every sermon is a home run. I think pastors kill themselves if they think every sermon is going to be better than the next sermon. So I think a common sense balance of enough encouragement, but no expectation that the pastor needs super pats on the back every single Sunday.
Yeah. If you know a person, or if it's you, who craves that kind of affirmation, have them meditate on the first 15 verses of Matthew 6. If you're giving in order to be seen by men, if you're praying in order to be seen by men, if you're fasting in order to be seen by men, you have your reward, and you won't get any from God. And just stab that. Just stab it right away. If you are after the praise of man, you're not going to get any from God. I mean, Jesus is really clear on this. And he would add preaching. If you said, keep on going, Jesus, not just giving, not just praying, not just fasting, but preaching. If you're after the praise of man, you get it, and that's all you get. No praise from God.
Last question, Greg.
Yeah, Pastor Kevin, you gave an example of preaching from Numbers 36 and mentioned kind of your tendency to want to preach on some of these more obscure passages. Pastor John, you made a comment in passing just about not preaching on those chapters in Joshua. And I'm just curious to know, like, some principles that guide your selection, not only of books, Old Testament, New Testament, genre. Obviously, we want to be sensitive to the needs and the pastoral issues in the congregation, but pericope size, all of those things, like what guides your preaching over a lifetime of preaching? I mean, I could make some comments about differences that I noticed between the two of you in a lifetime career of preaching, but I'm really curious to know what guides how much you preach, how big the text is, what you do, and kind of your philosophy there.
I'll just be brief, and then you can go.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Greg. I talked to some of my key elders, and they will give good feedback about what they think the needs of the congregation may be. I think I've been maybe disappointing to some of our elders at times because they've, rightly, they said, we would love for you to preach on, speak about community in our congregation, or we sense a need to speak to marriages, and I'm open to that. I think in theory, I feel like I can speak to the needs of the congregation best by going through a book. And whenever I've done here's a mini series on stewardship, which I know you got to do sometimes, or here, I'm going to try to speak to community building in the church. It just feels artificial. I can't do preaching as vision casting. So my back and forth is pretty normal, just thinking Old Testament versus New Testament, different genre, history, poetry, Pentateuch, Gospels, pastoral epistles, not wanting to do back-to-back long series. So Joshua will be with some fits and starts for about 8 months. I did Revelation 52 sermons, so that took a year and a half. I've never done all of Romans, so that's the big kahuna. I don't know how long that would be. I think sometimes in our circles we think that it's a measure of faithfulness if we do extremely long sermon series. And I don't think we ought to feel that pressure. John did it very effectively with Romans, but I think if we think, all right, here comes Romans, and it's going to be the 8-year series, and I just got to do that or I'm not faithful. I took John, and actually I remember Don Carson saying, and I didn't take his advice, and I usually should have, but John's gospel has so many of the same themes over and over again. I kind of wish I had taken it a little faster than I did, even though there's so much you can camp out in. So you live and learn a little bit, and you just try to balance. I try to balance Old Testament, New Testament, different genres, different lengths.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I don't think I have any confidence whatsoever that I made right choices. I mean, everything I ever preached is online. You can study and see what I left out. I never preached a sermon, not one, on the Song of Solomon, not a single sermon. I never preached, I think I preached a series on Jonah and one sermon on each of the minor prophets and a few other Old Testament series, some are Psalms, but almost everything in the New Testament. So whether that was wise or not, I would guess that the explanation for that is we gravitate to where we feel at home and where we feel fruitful, where we feel like we're moving people, where we feel like we're building people. and teaching rich, solid truth. And, you know, all those illustrations that he gave from Joshua or those other texts this morning sounded like, you know, be bold, be strong, be more faithful, whatever. And I said, I like that, but I don't do that very often. I want them to believe like in total depravity when they're done, or believe in the limited atonement when they're done. I want to get across things that they don't get any other way. So I don't know if that's right or not. So you pray, you talk to your elders. Just one closing illustration. So I finished Romans, 8 years, with a lot of breaks in between. And I said to the elders, where do you want me to go next? Let's do a survey. Give a piece of paper, write down where we should go next. Put your preference. And there were 3. Talk about marriage, talk about the new birth, and talk about the Gospel of John. And I did all 3. I did a series on marriage, it's in a book. I did a series on the new birth, it's in a book. And I got through John 14 and quit the pastorate. And I took 4 years to get through 14 chapters. I wish I could finish, but that's not going to happen probably. So I just did what they said. That was the way I decided.